Hi, welcome to a very special episode of I Must Stash You Something. I've got Marcus Zacharia. Did I pronounce that correctly?
Zacharia, yeah.
Do you prefer Marcus or Mortos?
So I like both. So Egyptians will say Moros right away, even if they read it Marcus. So I love both. So yeah, I'm comfortable with both.
So, over the course of this month in the mustache series, several interesting people have reached out to me. Nobody with this impressive mustache.
There you go.
Nobody. So, like
And a shirt too.
I feel inadequate, to be very honest with you. Like,
I know.
so I understand there's a story behind your mustache.
Yeah.
So I'll tell you my story.
Yeah.
I was on a Zoom with my Sunday school kids from Long Island. So I live in Boston now, but like that whole group of kids that when I was in my 20s was in middle school, had like their sort of like graduate adult meeting. Like now they're in their 20s, right? So I was joining them for the meeting, and we were talking, and Andrew Angeli, who's one of my favorites, had a mustache. I'm like, Andrew, is that a mustache? He goes, yeah. I'm like, Andrew, why do you have a mustache? And this was like April, like like a month or so into COVID. He goes, why do I have a mustache? The real question is, why don't you have a mustache? And I'm like, and the hot, and I'm like, okay, I guess, like, why not? Like, we're going to work anyway. What's the difference? And then when it turned out we were going to go back to work, this was like May or so. I told my wife, I said, "Hey, Mary, I got some bad news about the mustache." And she goes, "Oh yeah?" I'm like, I'm going to go back to work, like, in a couple of weeks. She goes, "Yeah." I said, "You know what that means, right?" She goes, "Yeah, you're going to have to shave it." I'm like, no, because I'm going to have to wear a mask. So there's really no reason to shave it. And this look came over her face when she was like, oh no. And she like I was just banking on him going back to work. But listen, I'm sick now. Like that's it. It's over. And I don't think it's going away, to be honest.
No, it's nice. I think, but good for her that she tolerated that mustache for quite some time now. So yeah, hooray to. Now I think my story was like I moved to the U.S. in 2011, and I had to explore so many things as an immigrant, as a privileged immigrant. I moved like regularly. I know culture. I wanted to read a lot, and I think it was like in Barnes and Nobles or something. Like I discovered a book called, or a movement actually called, The Art of Manliness. And I'm a person who likes vintage stuff, and and the book cover. I really like the book cover, and I like the mustache. And in that book, it was talking about all these like old nostalgic ideas about how to be a nice gentleman and how to open the door to the ladies. And of course, I came to know afterwards that many of these are like very colonial, misogynistic stuff. But I like that. I loved this vintagey, and even the writer actually, it was really like old school writer. And I'm a person who loved like reading in manuscripts and reading about all these history books and stories. So I thought, you know what, I think I am gonna commit to have a handlebar mustache, because it was in the book and in the move, like in the videos, that there is a YouTube channel, and was telling you how to have like different kinds of mustaches. And I like the handlebar mustache, and I said, you know what, I'm gonna learn how to do it. So and that turns out into an interesting journey. Now it has been like 3 years, and yeah, it's been an interesting journey. But I think for me, that mustache is a bit of a commitment, like to a certain cause or something more than just. So I started it as like a, like, oh, figuring out how to do it, how to grow it. Is it okay? And actually, the biggest challenge for me, most of these resources were for white men, meaning, yeah, it was ridiculous because a person like this with a very curly hair, I got even coarser hair in my mustache. So I find it very hard to really like. Some people actually just tell you, "Oh, you just train your mustache like this, and it will go that way." Never, not. Don't say this to an African. Here you go. You got this. Where is it? Yeah. See, I got mine. Yeah. Here you go. So yeah, so I had to really like, I had, it was a journey like to find the best, or the wax that will really hold my very coarse African hair mustache. So it has been fun. Here you go. Yeah, sharing the waxes. This is the one that I use, and
No,
you can see, like, do you see the, it
that looks
says,
expensive.
no, I don't spend much on these things, so don't worry. It just has to say like heavy hold or something to that effect, like meaning not for white people mustaches. So yeah, yeah, yeah.
And what are you drinking?
I'm drinking Karawya. Like this is so caraway is like it's the same, and this is like a bit of a geekiness of the pharmacist. Like caraway, anise, and fennel, all one like one family, and they taste almost the same. And it's very Egyptian actually. Like this is the go-to. Um, what is it for the kids when they have tummy ache? So the oh, اغلي حبة كراوية, like just boil some karawia and give it to the kid. They will feel good. So this is what I'm doing to myself, like to soothe myself before sleep.
So what has better health benefits, Karawiya or microchrome?
Oh, and no, the mercurochrome. Like I don't know how this. I actually I don't recall that we studied this. I studied like I went to school at pharmacy school in Egypt, and I studied it like, but I didn't. I don't recall that we studied mercurochrome. And but mercurochrome and aspirin and caraway was for literally everything. So yeah.
Right. Anything that would happen, like you'd like bump your knee, microchrome. Like, oh, like I've got like a zit, like, oh, microchrome. Like
Yeah,
anything that
yeah,
happens, microchrome is ID.
yeah,
Like,
yeah. So
I'm,
no,
I'm
it's
drinking actually chamomile and mint. So
nice.
we didn't plan this. Like we knew about the mustaches ahead of time, but we didn't know.
See, but like people with the same mind think like. But I think actually with mustaches, I the commitment with the mustache. I thought, we grew up in Coptic communities, wearing like I used to spend almost third of my year at a monastery, hanging out and learning, and one of the commitments was like wearing crosses, whether you're a monk or whether you are going there like for a retreat or something. You're wearing crosses. It's so beautiful. But I thought, why don't I make this mustache commitment to a new generation of men in our community and beyond. Yeah, something to commit to. Maybe I need to learn more about how to be a good man. Not just like, oh, stergil or like be a tough man and all these like toxic masculinity stuff, but especially also I have sons, so it's I wanted to really learn and unlearn many things about manliness. So it's sort of a commitment.
So what have you learned?
Um, Interestingly, when I got lucky that I am not in pharmacy anymore, and I say this with pride. Because I can really understand how pharmacists in North America are really bound with lots of over regulations, differently um, than in Egypt, where you are really focused on being a community hub for health and other things. So I'm working in a community health center in Canada, one of the oldest community health center, and the most thing that we talk about is equity, where people who have been historically oppressed or have been historically not taking chances, um, they need to get equitable amount of chances, not just equal amount of chances. So, and one of the main things about that commitment is that um, I think women, and from an equity perspective, and this is not just my thought, women everywhere, and especially in our communities, need to have more chances than men. So yeah, this is a main thing: equity.
So one challenge is that, everybody perceives equity kind of differently, where, if someone is used to a certain kind of equity, then, any change or any deviation from that. So without getting too philosophical about, like, sort of what is objectivity, how do we look at our experience and be able to say, listen, no, I know you have this bias or you have this experience, but there is some sense of equity that we should share.
Um, since I'm not a trained theologian and I don't like to be breachy, but I think what we have been learning, and this is actually one of the things that I explored when I started working at a not-for-profit here in Canada that has been doing uh, basically what I have been learning as a Sunday school teacher uh, for years and years, and they have been doing it very secularly, which is like um, they are not really like it's a very all these are very biblical and like love thy neighbor and all these things that it's a given like Jesus was giving. Like if you think about it, Jesus has been giving more time to the people on the fringe or people on the sides a lot more than in institutions. Isn't that equity? This like it's very simple. It was all about like all these like special like when Jesus was talking to Nicodemus, like it's like a whole chapter or almost like more like oh Jesus speaking with Nicodemus, Jesus speaking with the women who wherever did whatever, and all these are very special moments. Isn't this equity if you compare this with the event of resurrection, which is like a vital, like the amount of words I'm assuming I'm again I didn't do the calculation, but this is how I see it. This is basically in a very simplistic way equity, and in an applicable way too. This is like it's big part of our experience as immigrants in diaspora, which is my passion. I work with newcomers and immigrants, and I myself I did immigrated twice, once to the US and once to Canada, and people and the Coptic community in North America is an immigrant community, and we have been through a lot. Nobody immigrant, even the privileged immigrant. I consider myself a privileged immigrant. Um, Even the privileged immigrant has been through a lot, but of course, many people who don't have that privilege, most people who move out and migrate, didn't have that privilege. But they move for reasons out of their hand. They move for utmost reasons. So when they move to a place that is supposed to be welcoming, they need to get at least in the first some years more um, more chances just to get themselves on the ground and to be really um, like help them mitigate all these new differences. So simple. Two examples. One is biblical and one is applicable to us as Copts. Both are equity. Those are equity.
So this came up earlier with one of the people that I was having a conversation with, and it came up again, um, at work the other day where I, I see it the same way that you do, where it's not a matter of um, looking at limited resources and everyone saying, well, I'm going to get what I get and tatsarraf, like you figure out how you're going to get what you get. I see it as, no, I think there's a lot of excess and there's a lot of waste. And I think if we recognize that there's some basic needs that people should have, then we have a responsibility as a society where if you're really pushed to the question of someone has a mental illness, someone has a disadvantaged background, someone um, is for whatever reason not capable of sustaining themselves, right? And it doesn't, and you can pick any reason. You can pick the worst possible reason if you think, oh, you know, this person just doesn't want to, right? They don't want to succeed. Mashi, like whatever it is, does the person deserve to die for that, right? Because that's really the sentence, right? It's saying, okay, you don't fit the criteria of what I consider to be a hardworking person. Therefore, you don't eat, you don't get housing, you don't get health care, and I don't care if you die. So I look at that and I go, I think we have some responsibility to provide these things, right? And then the person from work was talking about this um, apartment building in like a very nice part of Boston called Back Bay, and it's like a $4,000 a month rent, and the person is basically getting it because the building gets like a tax break if they have like a certain percentage of their building labeled as Section 8 housing, which is kind of like the reduced rent. So they're looking at this person and saying, okay, well, I work harder than this person, why do they get to live there, right? So then you're stuck not in terms of talking about values, and you're stuck not talking about this sense of responsibility to each other, but you start talking about fairness. And this person is getting something that I had to work for and maybe didn't even get. So I think it's a little bit complicated to figure out the details, but what do you think the mechanism is that we are able to take those values by which you say we should live by and be able to take someone who's not necessarily on board to bring them along for the ride?
I think I'm not sure if it's a direct answer to your question, but I remembered. Um, I remember something. I think it's really connected to upbringing. I remember I was brought up um, in a middle class community in Shobra, and Shobra has the three level, like the upper and middle and lower socioeconomic class. And we were well off people living in a middle class place, and but my parents were continuously like teaching me how to not to show off and how to not really to enjoy life as well, but to have this balance. I think it's really connected with upbringing. Like kids need to be taught from the and because I'm a parent, I need to say this. Kids need to be taught from younger ages that they need to. Um, you don't really need to show off. You need to really understand people's struggle, and not necessarily to be, because we have this cool idea, and maybe that relates to our community and to the bigger capitalist idea that we are living in North America, which is like a capitalist societies, which is like charity over paying more taxes, where you would feel good about yourself being a charitable person, but not necessarily you need to feel good about yourself paying more taxes, while taxes fix the issues from, of course, there are issues with taxes and government and stuff like that, but taxes, and these are data, taxes fixes issues from the root compared to cute charities where I need to go and do cute missions and take photos with these cute Africans and come back and tell my other white folks that this is what I did. And it's like a temporary fixes. They can be good, but they are always temporary fixes. So I think from upbringing, you need to be taught about this, about how to not just to be a charitable person, but to really look and engage and listen to people with issues, and not just as an elite that I need to educate you and I need to tell you because you're a lazy person. I need to tell you how you should act and be a responsible, contributing citizen. No, you need to take the, and this is actually, again, I don't know why I'm preaching today, but Jesus did that. Jesus never, especially with the outcast, never told them, you go do this and you go do this, and I am the teacher here. He never did that. It's like always listening and always like lifting up. But we don't do this. Like in a capitalist society, we really encourage charity over fixing issues from the root. So if that, like, if this place have been um, next, and that's actually, this is happening in Canada a lot more than the obvious gentrification in the US. I lived in the US, and I was really struck coming from Egypt, and I know the slums in Egypt. I was really struck by the gentrification in the US. It was so obvious. I was like, what is happening? A very nice neighborhood, and on the other side, a very crappy, forgotten neighborhood. What is going on? And but what they are doing here in many parts in Canada, you'd find a very nice condominium, and right next to it, a and like, what is it? A subsidized housing, and they are both well kept and well maintained to the same degree. You can't say that, oh, these are the people who are homeless and living there, and those are the corporate people who are living there. Oh, that's nice. This place is cleaner. No, and this is from my taxes. I'm paying to this place to be equitable to the other condominium clean place, and I don't see the difference when I see. So that's, so my eyes are trained not to look at people who are struggling as people who are struggling. And the system that we are living in need to do that. You can't do this on an individualistic approach, or even on a charitable approach. You can't.
So, is there a um, way to look at this where if someone says that it's not something that they want to be responsible for paying for, right? Um, and they don't want to say that they're open to interpreting, to understanding an argument where it's like, no, listen, this is going to cost you more in the long term, right? Because, you know, the divisiveness in society and the othering that happens in society becomes more problematic in the long term, right? So to make people feel different, right? To put people in a position where they're disadvantaged, when it really, like, for a minimal investment, just to give them a nice place to live, something to eat, and healthcare. Like, it's not like we're breaking the bank here. What do you think, for someone to say, yeah, but I don't want to pay for that? What's a way to approach it then?
They can go live off the grid, and I don't know if they would manage living off the grid, but like many things, they can't. Like, go figure it. Like, and you don't need, like, you can work remotely. I don't know how you would get your. You would need government to get you water and money, or you need to go live off the grid like a, I don't know, a disconnected human being. Do it. You, like many people, you look it up online and figure it out. You would find that. But I think it's really, like, I think like, I think morally and even Christianly, um, it's yeah, I think it is a responsibility, and
Because I
live
think
off
in
the
our
grid.
community, like Copts in the United States do not align with this perspective, and in Canada it's kind of a taken for granted, like that's just the government system. But here it'll depend on sort of who's in power and what direction the country's leaning in, and people tend to vote, you know, based on alignment with a certain party. And
Yeah.
I think it's not news that one of the parties that some people in our community will align with doesn't align with these values.
Yeah. And actually, I think maybe that's also maybe new to our fellow Americans, that in Canada, um, almost most of the so here the provincial, which is the state governments, have a lot more influence than the state governments in the U.S. And most of our provincial governments now are conservative. So we are not that really different.
Really?
Uh, yeah. So yes, we have our cute Trudeau who's liberal, but but most of our provincial government, like the government of Ontario, like the government of Ontario and the government of Quebec, the two largest provinces in Canada, are run by conservatives. But what they have done in COVID, they aligned themselves with the common good. We all would have one mission. The only conservative government that didn't really align themselves, which is Alberta, has the most spikes and most issues with COVID.
Mm.
So, and I don't think, maybe to get back to the idea of us as Copts aligning with, oh, I like, maybe these are, I don't want to pay for this. People are or abusing the system or whatever. I get many thoughts around this, but the first thought that come to my mind, um, and needs to be answered: how many of your own family, and this question would be to that person: how many of your own family and your own church members and your close community members have came to the U.S. as like moved to the U.S. as a visitor visa? They broke the law and they overstayed here, or they are on Medicaid or Medicare. Every one of our like, and I'm sure in every of our families have members who are in need and using the social assistance system. We forget this, um, and the connection to this as well. And I think I see it as the root issue. We are oppressed people in Egypt. We have been oppressed by systems that call itself Islamic. It was political Islam, basically. And we see, and I understand that people, when they move here, they don't really want, especially if they have been directly targeted by that oppression. They don't want to see somebody even from the Middle East. And they don't really want to consider or to be considered as Middle Easterns. While you can't go around it. We are definitely Middle Easterns and we are definitely treated as Arabs. We can't go around it. But people have rights because of that oppression, or at least they don't want to relate to any of that. So they connect, or they see more, um, or they see the newcomers or the immigrants more obviously from the Middle East. They see them more because this has have been connected with them with oppression. So they see, like, you know what, I if you ask them, if they connect them, you are paying for your relative and your fellow Copts who are fleeing Egypt. You don't want to pay for this? They would rethink it. But they say this mainly because they think of people who are coming from around the world, especially Middle Easterns who are mostly Muslims, and they don't want to give them any tax money. So this is, in my opinion, the root cause.
Seeing the people that need something as being separate and other. And
and
if we
and
continue,
also connected with oppression, with their oppressors.
interesting.
Yeah, yeah, yeah.
So I'll share something with you that in Boston, in the sort of eastern Massachusetts area, and actually into New Hampshire as well, we started doing a health fair for newcomers, and it's something that started maybe 4 or 5 years ago at one of the parishes, and then eventually branched out to the other parishes. And the goal is very simple, like basic education, basic screening, like blood pressure, weight, uh, blood sugar, like really not like high level care, and pointing them in the direction where they can get free care. And if they need help filling out the application for something called Mass Health, which is like the state medical aid.
Medicaid.
Yeah, it's like the state Medicaid, exactly. Um, that someone will sit down with them and fill out the application and help them send it so that they can get free care. And I mean, I I would love to hear someone say that's a bad idea. You shouldn't do that. I would
Right?
love to hear the argument. No, no, no. We shouldn't take care of our people. لا 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 لا. خليهم يعيوا. لا 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 لا. Let them figure it out, right? And I think when you're talking, I'm hearing you say that. It's like no, no, no. Like these are our people. These are our family members. These are our cousins. These are our newcomers. We have to take care of them, right? And if you can't make the argument soundly that we shouldn't do this, and you know that any Egyptian person, right? If you go to their house, if they don't feed you, they might as well call their mom and call all of their family and tell them I'm not Egyptian anymore.
Yeah.
If you come to someone's house, يا تاكل يا تاكل يا تاكل, like you're eating something, right?
Yeah.
So I think we have a spirit of caring, and I think we have a spirit of hospitality.
Yes.
So it confuses me that if this is how we are as a people, we look at society and say, no, that's not my responsibility.
Yeah.
It doesn't make any sense.
Because we are constantly othering them, though. We have been othering the other because this is how we were raised and trained. This was our survival in an oppressing homeland. So it's really hard, especially for the immigrant generation, to ask them to be like open and like amazing was. But I'm speaking to the second and or first and second generations. You didn't grow up with the oppression. Yes, you learned about the stories, and another thing, these stories has been used by right wing and it's right wing media and not necessarily right wing entities to really use minorities coming from whatever parts of the world. Like it's happening with us as minorities, like as an Arab Christian minorities in the Middle East, as like Sikh minorities in India, and all these minorities. Right wing lobbying, like focus amount, like big amounts of education and money towards these populations to make them not to get rid of the history of oppression. What they don't have oppression here from whatever the back oppressors in homeland, especially first and second generation. But what we find is first and second generation still carrying that baggage of like othering, while we have a hopeful, very hopeful chance to open and build bridges with our kin newcomers, but also with other newcomers and other immigrants to lend them hands, and not from an elite perspective, charitable perspective, but we have been there. We are them. Isn't that like حب قريبك كنفسك? Come on.
It seems
نفسك.
simple. It seems so simple, but I think you're identifying the othering and the oppression and the that's not my problem root cause very well. But if we hold on to that and our community is this xenophobic, isolationist, like ده مش احنا لا خد بالك type of community, it doesn't look promising. It doesn't look good. And I haven't posted yet, but
Yeah.
I'll probably post the day before you a conversation with Father Brian Dunkel, who's a patristic scholar, historian, theologian from Boston College, and he said something that actually like I'm still like it's still bouncing around in my head. He said Western individualism is the universal solvent for culture. And he identified, and this is true also of the Russian Orthodox, the Greek Orthodox, that maintaining an identity as a ethnic church community is difficult. But he didn't mention them. He said about the Italians and the Irish because they're predominantly Catholic. And he said these communities came with a very strong Christian identity. And Western individualism, he called it the universal solvent. He said they were not able to maintain their identity because the identity was cultural and not faith, spiritual, Christian based. And if our, I see hesitation and I like it.
Yeah. But I want you to continue your idea though.
So what he was saying was basically if a community identifies itself based predominantly on culture, and this isn't, and he clarified and he said, not to say that you express your Christianity in a homogenous way. No. He said you express your Christianity in your own way, right? You are Coptic Christians, right? You are Catholic Christians. You are Italian Catholic Christians, and the way that the faith is expressed is going to be different. But if the root of the relationship and the root of the community is ethnic, it's not going to hold together as a community. If the root of the community and the connections between the people in the congregation is faith-based and in Christ, then yes, the culture might change, the ethnic connections might change, but there's going to be a prevailing connection. So I thought it was a compelling argument, but I like the fact that you something.
Yeah. Maybe I was resonating with this much before I started working in the service field at because I have seen people without faith, like without knowing their faith, without saying that they are doing this based on faith or whatever, um, doing the common good. So I don't like demonizing culture because I love, we just said how amazing and welcoming we can be. And this is very cultural. It's like it's Egyptian thing, it's an Arab and Middle Eastern thing. We celebrate, we do like, when somebody marry like a white person and they keep saying, oh, why are they very noisy? Why are they having lots of food? We're just like, this is us. Most of the converts who convert in Coptic Orthodoxy, they convert and they have a Christian background. They see that this is amazing. This churches or this community is very living. And you know what? Aren't they Christian too? No, they are Christian. And I have been to many Christian churches. I have many Christian friends in many different leadership positions. But the life is this life is like an important component, not because we are Orthodox or Christian. It is a contributing thing, yes, but mainly because we are Middle Eastern and Arabs and Mediterraneans, and like we have all these like crazy, amazing, welcoming experience on our plate. When we try to separate them, um, to say like we are Orthodox, we are just Orthodox, and we are mainly Orthodox. Um, Many people try to do that, and they try to maybe go to and read, or maybe go to Orthodox, like Greek Orthodox churches, whatever. They don't really find themselves because we have this uniqueness. Yes, those people can be like Greeks, like many Copts say, and you hear this often. The Greeks and the Russians are they are amazing Orthodox people. Yeah, they're as if like orthodoxy is like this thing that we need to really, we would always feel that we are really lower here and we need to get to this like level of orthodoxy. No, why don't we cherish our culture and enjoy all these cultural elements that does not exist at any other Orthodox or Christian church, and at the same time embrace education, embrace theological education, embrace professionalism as well. When the church wants to do like a newcomer services, whatever, reach out to the community center that's really close by. You don't really need to invent the wheel and do that service or stuff like that, you know. So no, I think we need to celebrate culture as well as connecting it with our faith. But our culture is awesome.
I can't tell you how happy you just made me.
Yeah.
I,
Like
I mean, let me be clear. You made me happy, first of all, because you and I are talking for the first time ever. Like, we literally said, "Hey, nice mustache. Let's talk."
yeah,
And
yeah. Here you go.
right, literally, that was like the whole premise. And um, our first conversation is being recorded for anybody that wants to see it. So, Abuna Dan says, I have a very small but very loyal following.
Oh my god, like yeah, I feel for them.
So, I mean, there's people literally, they're like, I'm addicted to these YouTube videos you're putting up. It's like my Netflix now. Like, I just keep watching them and watching them. But first of all, I didn't know what the reason. People ask me like, "Oh, why are you doing this?" I'm like, I don't know. I just like talking to
Yeah.
people and I find them interesting. And I invited some people and they're like, "Mina, but we don't agree on almost anything." And I'm like, "Yeah, but that's good. Like, we want to be able to disagree with each other, right? And we want to be able to hear something and say, 'No, I don't think that's true.' And I'm telling you, dude, this guy's got a PhD from Notre Dame. He's brilliant. He completely blew my mind. I thought it was so
Sorry.
profound what he's saying. And you're like, nah, I don't think so. And I'm like, man, he's got a point. He's got a point. And
Amen. Yeah.
and
Sorry, go
and
ahead.
and like I'm like, yeah, and I don't know, and I don't know how to reconcile the two ideas, right? Because I'm hearing Father Brian and I'm hearing you, and I heard him and I was like, wow, that's really helpful. And then I'm hearing you and I'm like, yeah, but that's really helpful too. And the two ideas they seem to be saying the opposite, right? And in a dialectic, you're going to have A and you're going to have B, and they don't seem to match. And it's hard to avoid picking one, right? I agree with Father Brian. No, I agree with Marcus. It's hard, but you have to have the discipline to say, listen, brilliant idea, brilliant counterpoint. Let's let's give space for both ideas and let's give space for the conversation, right? Because if
Yeah.
we have to decide, like right now, like you have 90 seconds, you need to decide, is the faith more important or is the culture more important? We're gonna lose something. We're gonna lose something. So I don't know. Like I don't know if I agree with you. I don't know if I agree with him. I don't know if I
Yeah.
agree with both of you. But I love that you said, no, I don't think so. And you gave me such a great answer that I'm like, that's right. That's true.
Yeah, comfort. Like, come on, even. Like I would bring and people talk about this, the American Coptic Orthodox churches or the Canadian Coptic Orthodox churches. Even many converts, they don't like that brand. They want that old newcomer, less elite church that they saw when they first introduced. It was just so. And I think actually, and I don't want necessarily want to get into that topic, but I think I have been there. I myself, as Marcus, have been into this, like, let's look at my roots. Let's really read in theology. Let's read in what our Copts have been thinking. Let's read patristics. Let's read. And then um, I found that many of these arguments and many of these circles are very demeaning to me as uh, to my culture. It's like you need to always strive to be good Christian and a good Orthodox, and never mention celebrating. We just celebrate the Egyptian festival because it's like brings the white people to the church. But this is the only festival that we celebrate our Egyptianness in. Like, it's always that, that we celebrate the Egyptian, and we get these kids wear pharaohs and cute whatever. Well, actually, Egyptians don't walk like Egyptians like the white people think. Come on, give me a break. We can celebrate the actual amazing elements of our culture, um, while also be like balanced about it being theologically sound and orthodoxly sound, because honestly this is what I see from the scene in general. And I feel for Copts who grew up in North America not having that rich cultural background back in the motherland or in the Middle East, where the the culture part. And actually I think this argument, Mina, resonate with people who grew up in North America with a lots of cultural baggage from the parents' generation. Their parents has been really like they didn't really like their culture because of the history of oppression, and they have all the right not to celebrate their culture. But I think we have that opportunity as first and second generation Egyptians and Copts in North America to celebrate and find connection with other Middle Easterns. Yes, many of them are Muslims, but they can be cool. Um, I don't know, Mediterraneans, like, find similarities with like other Africans, like other black folks. Come on, we can build so many bridges. We are in the center of the world. We can celebrate our. I argue that we share a lot more with different parts of the world than this orthodox box that we try to fit ourselves in. We try so hard to build the bridges and connection with. It's good building bridges with these churches, with the Armenians, with the Syriacs, with the Malabar, with the Ethiopians, and with the Eritreans. But we don't really share that much compared to other Egyptians who are not really church going Egyptians, which is they have a Christian background or they might be Muslims. Not all Copts, or not all, not all Copts are a church going Copts. Who are these people? You would find them. You would like, but we don't really, we strive for our orthodoxy and Christianity over our culture. I think it needs to have a balance.
So where does Jesus fall into this conversation? Because you referenced Jesus several times and said, well, this is what Jesus does, and he's the one that dictates our values.
I don't know. I don't like to be preachy because again, I am not a theologian. I'm like a frontliner who works on the ground with people from different backgrounds.
But
Um,
I didn't bring him up. You brought him up. You
yeah,
said
it's weird. Yeah, it's so weird, right? Because this is how
I didn't say Jesus. You said Jesus.
yeah, I think if I would see Jesus here, I would see Jesus as an anti-racist, anti-oppressive, anti-elitist person who is not preachy, who or they are not preachy,
Hmm. Hmm.
um, who are listening, who are doing the work without saying that this is the work that needs to, like, yeah, and actually challenging authorities, challenging people, challenging oppressors, challenging the person who would say, oh, I don't need to. I imagine in my, and actually this is like a scenario that I just imagined in my head now. um, Jesus talking to that person who doesn't want to pay taxes, to that person who might see in their mind they are lazy or they are abusing the system. I see these just talking to these people and trying to convince them this is what I did, but this is what should be done.
And what was the culture of Jesus? Because if I mean Jesus was Jewish, right? And he identified with his culture as a Jewish person, then he wouldn't have spoken to the Samaritan woman.
Here you go. And
So
that's against the law. That's against orthodoxy, yeah? Dun 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 dun.
no, but this is what I mean. Like we're not so I said having a spiritual faith identity, and you jumped to an orthodox
Yeah.
ecclesial identity. And I think those are
Yeah.
two different things, right?
Yeah. I'm not actually challenging your thought
No,
specifically
you
as much
are. I
as
don't apologize. I never apologize for challenging a thought. It's either a good thought that will stay and actually get stronger with the conversation, or it's a bad thought that I should get rid of myself.
no,
So
I didn't
neither
mean that.
apologize.
Not necessarily your idea as much as I wanted to take it from the micro to the macro, which is and I like to make it practical on the ground right away because this is my thought. I am friends with so many academics and I love them and their work is really important. But I am a frontliner and I want like translate this on the ground. Um, and I see that people on the ground and in discussions they are not really abiding. They are orthodox bros or fighting more than talking about faith or like talking about spirituality. Because you know what? If we talk about spirituality, we would be connected to the Sufi Muslims. We would be connected to Muslims. Why don't we connect with them? You know what? Because we are Islamophobes, and part mainly because of our history of oppression and I give that excuse. I think mostly for the parents' generation, but for people who didn't face directly that oppression, I myself didn't face that oppression directly because I was privileged in Egypt. So guess what? Some Egyptians also don't really fret Egypt because of oppression from Muslims. I didn't get that myself. My parents did, but myself I didn't. So again, if we put people into boxes. We don't like to use the broader boxes, the spirituality boxes. We keep labeling people. Oh, what does it mean spirituality? Is it like the yoga people who are worshiping the devil? No, this is orthodoxy, and orthodoxy says that the yoga people are worshiping the devil. What the? So I want to connect with the spiritual people who are practicing yoga. What the? Come on, like فتح دماغك and try to build the bridges. We're not telling you to convert to whatever they, but build the bridges.
I mean, you bring up connections to Muslim people, and
Absolutely.
I am talking to a buddy of mine. His name is Omar Shaker, and he's uh, a Muslim Egyptian who works in healthcare tech. And he and I have been introduced by someone who I don't know if you saw his mustache conversation, Paul Kist, who is like family. Like Paul and I grew up together. So Paul introduced me to Omar. Omar and I have been in touch, for most of this year. And I don't know, like I don't see my relationship with Omar being any different than my relationship to anybody else in our community, where we share
There you
the
go.
same ideas, we share the same values, we share the same desire to make the world a better place. All of the friends that I interviewed from high school, college, they're Jewish. Like, okay, like, what difference does it make, right? And one conversation that came up with my buddy Dave Broder is this tribalism, right? And tribalism is, I think, what you're responding to, right? This idea that, oh, this is who we are, and that requires an other. And I recommend this book to everybody called Tribal Leadership, and it identifies communities as either like dysfunctional communities, functional communities that are very like self-centered, or transcendent communities that are about the values. It's not like, oh, we're great or I'm great. No, like virtue is great, life is great. And I think as Christians, like we have to figure out how not just to behave, but how to guide others in our community to behave that way. And I think you did it the right way, saying, go back to Jesus, see what he did, ask what he would do, and this is how we should behave as a community. And you don't need to be a theologian to be able to take a step back and say, okay, you know, what are we doing here? Are we othering or are we building bridges?
And I think it's important in the Jesus narrative is we don't also want to elitize Jesus, because this is an issue. Because when we elite our faith, our practices over others, it's still othering. So that's why I was hesitant about Jesus, because honestly, I haven't seen Jesus. And so many people on the ground right now are doing the work of Jesus. So is it just Jesus? Because if you are creating another figure um, that is like very perfect, you are othering. So we just need to be careful when we use Jesus as an image, as an example, not to elite the experience of Jesus. Because when we elite these experiences, we get into oppression, we get into racism, we get into assimilationism. So, yeah, and actually, this is what's amazing. And I'm getting theological again. I don't know why, but isn't that the core of the amazing idea of an amazing belief of incarnation and theosis? We are Jesus. Jesus is us. Nota. And how amazing this would be for me as a Christian Coptic Orthodox when Athanasius said that, and then I am walking like this. I am not talking about how Jesus I am, but Jesus is me and I am Jesus and other people are Jesus too. Without getting into this, like, oh, are they baptized? Are they whatever? Come on, give this part a break and don't elite the Jesus experience if you want to use Jesus example.
So I'm going to be a little bit of a geek right now, and I apologize for this because you're like, yeah, these academics, you make it practical. So I'm going to share my screen here.
I love no, but one second. I love academics, and I love academics. I love them so much, and actually, their work is much needed. And academic skeptics are dangerous to our communities, though. So
do you see my screen here?
yes, okay. The title, the spectrum of Christology. Okay, here you go.
So this is how
Spectrum. Wow.
Right? So this is how Jesus can be considered either as the exclusive savior of Christianity, right? Where, oh, you only find Jesus in the church, versus seeing Jesus as the salvation, the person who saves everyone, right? And there's a whole spectrum, right? Where it goes from this very, very, very unique, very, very, very specific to how Jesus can be, according to this model, normative, right? But not constitutive. Like you don't need to necessarily uh, say that Jesus needs to be said out loud, right? But the salvation of Jesus and who Jesus reveals God to be, right, is true. Like that is the truth, right? And if you see somebody at this community health center behaving in a Christian way, you don't need to go up to this person and say, you know, you're behaving a lot like Jesus. You know what the one thing is that you're missing? To be baptized, right? That's not necessary, right? That's not necessary. You just look at this person and say, wow, glory to God, I saw Jesus today. And that's a blessing for us. And I know that that might be a perspective that can be taken the wrong way either way. oh, you're saying that everything is normative back to Jesus and you're just a right-wing fundamentalist Christian in disguise. You can also take it the other way and say, oh, you want to get rid of the church and you want to get rid of everything and everything is just interpreted however you want and you're a relativist. And I'm like, no.
Yeah, yeah, yeah. It's like
It's it's
we
it's,
thought
it's
we
so
thought يقولوا لك ايه, you are being relativist, you are being humanist, and like you are like toning down orthodoxy, and like come on. Because I have an issue with, I have been there. I have an issue with this like orthodoxy thing. I love being orthodox and all that, but my issue was as Copts, we are not as orthodox. We have our unique orthodoxy. Do not try to compare it to the philosophical stuff of like Maximus the Confession and like the cool folks of Greece or the cool folks in Russia. Just cool it down. Enjoy your culture. Understand it. Why are we messy in the church? Why are not as organized? All these ideas. Why we don't have a canon? Like really, we have so many canons and the manuscripts are all over the place. You can't put them together. It's like a mess. And we don't have a catechism. Like people try to make like, or now they are trying to make a catechism. It's not gonna work. And like, come on, we are not as that organized. And this is a very unique thing. Celebrate this, or why don't we celebrate our messy orthodox version of orthodoxy? It's cool. It's very unique. Why are we keeping pushing that like, oh, like we need to be that on, this is very relativism and this is very humanist and very toning down our dogmas, and come on, look at the uncle and aunt who are really pious and coming to church and eating urbana at the end of the liturgy. Do these people, I think I still have faith after going all this, like studying about theology and patristic and all these like cool important things, but not the main thing or not the only thing in the church. I'm still faithful because of the faith of my ancestors, whether they were my ancestors were like the immediate grandparents, or my ancestors as whatever who were pharaohs, pagans, whatever. I like that lineage. I am proud of it. And this is amazing.
So I suppose now I've been a little bit distracted by your mustache and my feeling of inadequacy that your mustache is better than mine, which is 100% fact. But regardless, I'm still the host, so I mustache you something. And I think I know the answer to this already, but how important is it that we answer all of these questions that you're bringing up, of whether it's more of our faith or more of our culture, how we express our faith, whether it's messy or it's organized, how we are able to find a way to say that these are the norms and this is the Jesus that we love, that we follow, that we worship, versus having a true and honest and welcoming perspective to people that don't share the same beliefs. These are all questions that you and I are sitting here and wrestling with and going back and like quoting Dunkel and quoting Schneller and quoting all these people. But at the end of the day, I don't feel like we've even made a dent in the real fundamental issues that are things that we're struggling with here in this conversation and we're struggling with as a community. How important is it that we answer these questions?
I think it's very important because I see if this is an ending to the conversation, I think it's really important to break. Yes, we are coming from a very oppressive or oppressed homeland, but I think this should be a very empowering. So instead of continuously, I think it's important, like we keep using martyrs are the fruit of the church, and but we also need to remember why we are celebrating our history of oppression. We need to use it as a very empowering thing to continuously be reminded not not to continue the cycle of oppression in the diaspora, to continue that, like we need to break that cycle of oppression within on our Coptic Orthodox community, with our women, with any person within our community who is oppressed. The treatments of Black folks in our community, the treatments of Eritreans, and whatever any darker skinned Copts. Uh, we need to confront all these forms of oppression. We need to um, stop the oppression of, or even thinking oppressively against Muslims. We need to stop the oppression against our queer folks in the church. We need to stop the oppression against all people who are not at church going, but is still Copts. All these, like when you try to label people as, oh, you need to be a church going in order to be a good Copt. No, this is continuation of the cycle of oppression. So I think in order for us to have a hopeful future, a future that's positive, we need to stop oppression in general. That's it.
Yeah, and most of the other conversations, I would mustache something sort of earlier on the conversation. So please don't feel like, this is an invitation to wrap things up. Are you tired?
I can still go.
You're good?
Yeah.
Because I think that if we're committed to answering these questions, right, we have to figure out how. And
you want to get into the hows? Yes, sure.
Because if we're going to be practical, right, we're going to say yes. Yeah. Now we have these questions. Meshi, like Mina and Marcus had a conversation. Two ridiculous guys with two ridiculous mustaches on this ridiculous podcast accomplished nothing, right? So what do we do? Because what you're saying makes sense, but how it's going to happen, I'm all ears.
Okay, so I think there are two streams to that, institutional and people. And I will start with people because it's always any of the positive changes that happen throughout any history start from people, not from institutions. And we just need to think that the church is our home, and it represents so many good things, but it's still an institution. And yes, and if you think back to Jesus, their thing, like Jesus' thing, was very grassroots thing, a lot less institutional, stuff like that. I know that theologians and Orthodox people would argue this, but this is how I see it as a frontliner on the ground. That always constantly challenging my own institution, and this is how we get better. Like we challenge our own rules and policies to get better. So on the side of people, I think we need to break the cycle of oppression by speaking up compassionately. Like we need to learn how to positively and compassionately talk about people, about issues, naming them with their names without being afraid. We need to develop personal relationships with leaderships and other leaders in the community and other community members, like deep personal relationships. I see that it can be a hard thing to accomplish. I myself had a hard time integrating into new Coptic communities. I'm happily connected with my own Coptic communities, but I find it hard to integrate with new Coptic communities, and I tried many things. But anyway, we need to use that hard route of making a deep personal connection with leadership, to talk to them. This is what I have been seeing, and this is what needs to be done. And these are my conversations with my friends, who are, many of them are leaders, and like in my family too, leaders in the church, whether they are clerical or lay leadership. So we need to continue talking about it, and speaking up shouldn't be a taboo. And the good thing is, we live in free societies, which is a very positive thing. People in our motherland, they don't have the option. So speak up positively, speak up in many different ways. Don't give up. Talk about oppression of women in the church. Talk about and keep echoing the issues around abuse. Keep echoing the issues around women leadership in the church. Keep echoing all these things that you see that basically other Christians aren't. Don't we want to be Christians? Other Christian churches have women in every single leader position, and like traditional churches who have liturgy. The Episcopalian Church, the Anglican Church, they have hierarchy of leadership in hierarchy in every position. Um, so those are Christians too. Why? And they are actually more theologically oriented than us. Cool enough, they have more theological institutions than us. So come on, give us a break, and we need to move on this. So yeah, so people can do that. Continue to form groups. We need to continue these talks, Mina, and speak up on the internet. Talk about it. You don't have to go on a protest. You don't have to be like and always intimidated, or all this the I don't know, the duck, or what do you call it? But the soda, or always like in every meeting, you're challenging the thing. You know what? Create a group of challengers inside the church. Yeah, you might get ousted at some point, but keep forming groups to really pressure the institution about issues that we are having in the community. And this is and challenge it in a very compassionate way. Tell them that we love the church, we love the institution. These are the changes. Now, I myself, because I got to know many, I have many close friends who are Muslim and queer. I am talking to I am talking from a position of knowing, and that's why I keep talking to leadership and the fact about the amount of homophobia and Islamophobia in our communities. This needs to stop. Like, come on. Yes, I understand the history of oppression, but even I say this, even if you don't align with people's beliefs, do not discriminate against them. Do not be elite. And this is back to the elite Jesus position, because people keep bringing Jesus. Oh, would Jesus do that? Come on. Don't use Jesus on your own terms. Don't elitize Jesus. Jesus was never an elite. Jesus was a people's person, and never discriminated. So do not discriminate because of theology, because of dogma, because of whatever. Just be like a regular Jesus, not a Jesus on the throne, or just our Jesus بتاعنا ده بتاع الشارع. An institution, it's a long story, and we have many issues, and I think, and also we have many issues because of the centrality of the church and the decentrality of the institutions. We have part of the church in Egypt, and all the leaders that you would talk to, especially clergy, would understand this. I think people need to keep speaking up about the issues, and we are getting better. And the fact that we are talking now, we might have, we like imagine some years ago, or maybe without the COVID, we might not have met or talked about issues like this.
What happens when the individual or the group gets written off as a fringe or external or non-Christian organization?
Again, I think if we see that the church, we need to have these ideas in our mind. That church is our home, and all that good spiritual thing, but also church is an institution. And I think when any institution feel that they are um, under pressure from another body, for example, and this has been happening with the Catholic Church, and actually, this is the history of not-for-profits in general. Almost all the not-for-profits has been run by the Catholic Church institution, or a church institution. And then some people started to say, you know what, we are against the corruption in the church. And we know so many things. We need to continue doing the common good and the good thing. Um, but from outside, we need to serve these people, or these, like the Catholic Church build schools, build so many things to serve the community, regardless if people are Christian or not. Uh, but people disagreed with how they do stuff, so they start forming their own, without being labeled as a churchy or Christian or whatever. The churches backlashed and kept labeling them until um, now, most of the charities, or of course, the Catholic churches still have one of the biggest chunks of charities around the world, but there are a lot more not-for-profits, more than the Catholic Church, and people need to continue doing these things outside of the church and in intersectionality with the church. I think um, I think if any of you, and actually this is what we see many bodies that are forming now. Like I would mention, the one of the oldest was Coptic orphans, I guess, and then now there are many stuff are popping up. And actually, one of the promising things that I have seen, like another not-for-profit that help Coptic folks to apply for grants and like to get into colleges and stuff like that. And another one is El Mahabba Center in Nashville, and also which Mahabba Center, which they are doing great work, and yes, recently have been labeled from the church institution as non-Orthodox. Again, back to the same point that I have been talking about: non-Orthodox, non-Christian, and that labeling. While people like them have been, and if you talked about any not-for-profit that is Coptic, um, about their relationship with the church institution, you would be told that, oh, a diocese is working fine with us, another diocese doesn't like us, and another doesn't. And so, but they are continuing doing their work. Coptic Conference is continuing to do their work, and Al Mahabba is continuing to do their work, because they are doing a much needed work that the church will not be able to do. And I keep saying this to like my my um, my my clergy friends, whom the church doesn't need to do many of these things. Do not overwhelm the church capacity. And priests, who I find them always overwhelmed with so many directions. They are my friends. I know them. I see them overworked, which is actually against the and like a responsible HR department at any organization. The overwork, and this is not responsible because they do so many things. They are asked to do so many things. Leadership doesn't really give them the space to just focus on what is being clergy. You need to teach and pray. You are not a social worker. You are not a marriage counselor. You are not all this list of. You're not a newcomer navigator. You are not all these things. So, I think that the only good thing, even if these organizations have been labeled by the church as a not Christian and whatever, there are so many non-Christian organizations that the church use, even Muslim organizations, to facilitate their work. So come on, I think it's a very childish thing, that an institution, and I told you the Catholic Church has been like did this in the history. They don't do this anymore, because like so many people are against them, and they came like many people started their not-for-profits against the church as well, but they are doing a great job. So I think church institutions need to like put aside these childish, discriminatory, and anti-women, because actually, guess what? most of these organizations that I told you about has women in leadership, which is a big issue too. Are we as a church institution affirming women in leadership, especially a lay leadership? We're not talking about clerical leadership. Come on. Anyway, I could go on and on, but I think these fringe institutions, organizations, need to be exist, and I think it's one of the things that the people or cops need to continue to grow and do more and more and more to help the church institution do their job better. Because guess what? Almost all these fringe organizations or the new, I don't know why they are very mainstream to me. I work for not for profit. So, and it's like, has been there for 40 years. So I'm so proud of working there. So the church need to use these leadership, that professional leadership. ادي العيش لخبازه, for crying out loud, which is like give the baking skill to, or give making bread to the skilled baker. Come on. And like in the church, you're a priest, you teach and pray. Give other institutions who have skilled, professionally trained people in their field, whether in immigration, whether in marriage counseling, whether in therapy, give them like make the church as a hub, transfer all these, like, or make referrals to all these organizations. It's better. Like, imagine you have in your diocese, and I'm talking specific about the Southern Diocese and El Mahabba here. Imagine in your diocese, you don't need to reach out to a white organization or a non-Christian organization or non-Egyptian organization, and you have in your diocese an Egyptian one. Imagine in your diocese, Coptic Orphans is so active, and you intentionally avoid them because you didn't like the leadership. For crying out loud, are we here to serve people, or are we having some baggage and personal baggage? Isn't that is that good collaboration? We need to work together and collaborate over the divisiveness and like our differences. It's just basic common sense, right?
I mean, listen, like I think how people define common sense and how people define truth and how people define evidence, data, facts, is a little bit fluid. But what you're saying resonates with me, and it reminds me actually another conversation that hasn't been posted yet, but I'll make sure it's posted before yours goes out. Is with Azar Bastavros, and phenomenal guy. I mean, highly recommend to listen to that conversation. But he was talking on the interpersonal level, what you're talking about on the sort of more big picture macro level. And what he suggested for a micro level one-on-one conversation where it seems the other person is not, like, ideally both people go in to a conversation willing to be convinced, right? Both people go in and say, let's talk, let's understand each other, let's work together as best as we can. And if we can't work together, then we say, hey, you do you, I do me, God bless, and whatever. But he said, even if one party in a conversation is approaching the conversation with love and with openness, then even if the other person just argues and knocks down everything that you say, or just doesn't listen and everything is dissipating, then at least you keep the dialogue going. And what I'm hearing you say is that if someone has an organization, there's a group of people that are saying, listen, we're just trying to do the right thing. You want to say we're doing the bad thing and you want to treat us with this, like, no, you can't do this. No. Then, okay, that's fine. But we're going to continue to do what we feel is in service. And if we ask for help and we're treated with this, like, oh, we'll see, and there's no real interconnection, we're going to continue to do our work as best as we can. and be open to correction. Like it's like هنعمل في دماغنا وبس. No, like there's a difference between we don't like this thing that you're doing,
Yeah.
right? And we'd like you to consider changing it versus I don't like you, right? And this goes back to your earlier point where when we're talking about the disenfranchised, right? The people that feel like they don't belong in our community, it's never because, oh, I don't like this thing that you do, let's talk about it. Because I have had very many difficult conversations in both directions where people that I love, that I care about, I say, what's the deal with this thing that you're doing? And people that love me, that care about me, come to me and say, hey, what's the deal with this thing that you're doing? But there's a difference between I don't like this thing that you're doing and I don't like you.
Yeah. I think that resonates too. Again, I think we all know, and this has been conversations with leadership personally, with me and others, where big number of the leadership in our Coptic Church institutions are coming from Egypt, and they haven't, and that background of oppression, and that resonates to not don't have the space to be open. Many of actually the church leadership, they are newcomers or immigrants themselves. The generation of immigrants, imagine them as the generation of our parents. We have that privilege of like being open to discussions and like, let's figure out, because this is a point of privilege. But the church and institution don't have this. I'm not giving them excuses because honestly, I'm always challenging institutions, whether religious or whatever. But because you don't, but I'm trying to find the reason behind it. Because again, we are all part of systems. And those have not been brought up, and they have been brought up in communities that always label people. Oh, you're Muslim? Oh, you are pro-life. Oh, you are pro queers. You are مش عارف ايه. Come on, just هدي نفسك كده. You don't need to label me right up front. Let's talk about what is the issue at hand. People need to be served. The church is overwhelmed, and honestly, they are not trained. All they are not trained. I needed to be. I'm a healthcare professional, and I needed to be trained for so long. If I give you my like the whatever the amount of courses that I needed to take in order to work with vulnerable population is ridiculous. This can't be fit into the 40 days of training for our priests. And actually, I actually like that us as Copts stick to the 40 days, not necessarily for them to go to theological school and stuff like that. Yeah, I'm fanatic to this, but I think this is one of the things that we do. Like we focus on teaching the priest, the liturgy, to teach, like to pray first, not to talk a lot, not to do many talk. Pray first and learn the Uddes. Focus on this. مش many talks. And give العيش لخبازه. ادي العيش لخبازه. Give the professionals to do their job. اديهم, like they can help you. Like, come on. So again, it's the mentality of conversations. And unfortunately, and the like I get a bit sad when I see the younger generation leaders in the Coptic community or Coptic churches are using that orthodoxy thing again and the dogma in these conversations as well. And so they are both. So the older generation, they are not open because of that history of oppression, but the younger generation leadership, they are not open because they like really holify dogma and over people. Let's get to the ground. I'm a frontliner. Here is the issue. We need to fix it. We have an abuse crisis in the church. We need to fix it now, without being wishy-washy. Now, do the right thing, not by statement or like whatever unapplied policies. Just do I don't want to swear here, the job. Do the job. That's it. So and this is the common sense that I talk about. We like, yeah.
I'm so glad you reached out, my mustache brother, my Coptic brother, my Christian brother, my service brother, my North American brother, my world human brother. Um, anything like I'm out of similarities
Oh.
that we share.
Yeah, you will get labeled. I will get labeled a lot, like down, and you can see, folks. Your comment. I don't know if you open the comments or not, Mina. Do you have the comments open on your YouTube videos?
Yeah, I mean, I screen them. Like, I will look and see if somebody's being
Because
like,
people will give you more ideas about labels as well, whether positive or negative. Down at the bottom, so I'm okay.
I would be honored to share some negative labels with you, my friend.
Awesome, good, and let's talk about it at another time.
Honored, honored. Um, so
Awesome.
thank you for reaching out. Thank you for joining me. I am indebted to you pushing back on some things that I thought I had a pretty good perspective on, but you're very challenging, and again, I don't think it's about agreement or disagreement. I think it's about dialogue and hearing what you have to say and going, I didn't look at it that way. Like, let's think about it some more and let's discuss it again and kind of go back and forth and try to figure out, how to do the right thing, like you said. So thank you for coming. Any parting wisdom? Any parting words?
No, I would invite you to join, like to eat with me some fitir al malak, because Eid al Malak, like the feast of the Archangel Michael, was 2 days ago. And this is a very cultural thing, and you won't find it at any Christian or Orthodox church. So come on, this is a very Coptic thing. So I would invite you to eat with me some fitir al malak. Cheers.
Actually, we have Uno's Pizza in the
Here you
fridge.
go.
And I don't know if you've had Uno's Pizza, but like I was eating the crust the other day and I was like, what does this taste like? And I'm like, Mary, the crust, it tastes like tir malak. And she's like,
Yeah.
it's not possible. But it's very similar, actually, the consistency. So
Yeah,
maybe
some people.
maybe the channel will get sponsorship from Uno's Pizza.
Oh yeah, here you go. By the way, some people calls it what is it? Michelangelo. What is it? Yeah, Michelangelo's pie. I found people, so that might be the thing. But you know what? I like to stick. It's Fitir Malek, and I'm proud Copt. It is. You won't find it anywhere.
All right,
Cheers.
send me the recipe.
Very well. Another actually cool diaspora lady from Mississauga, Ontario, posted. So I'm gonna send it to you.
Here then.
All right. Cheers.
All right, thank you, my friend, and thank you guys for listening.